everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. I am your host, Ruben Mendive, and today we have a brand new writer here in the studio virtually. So I like to start every interview by having my guests introduce themselves. So your name and how you identify for the people at home.
Hola all, my name is Alexis Tirado, and I identify as she and her.
I like to know where my guests are from. So what's the short story? What's the long story?
Okay, so I am a Boricua SALVI, Jersey, New York City hybrid, currently living in Los Angeles. The long story to that, I was born in the Bronx. I lived in Soundview, and then my parents moved my family to New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan, for school. And it was always felt like the outside looking in. So I went to elementary school, high school, New Jersey. But in high school, I would go to clubs in the city. I would go shopping. I would go to Patricia Fields. I would always try to hang out there. My grandma founded a church in Washington Heights. So I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. And as soon as I graduated college, as soon as I could afford to, I immediately moved back to New York. And I lived in the East Village for many, many years. I feel like New York is a big part of who I am. And it feels like a bloodline to me. But I currently live in LA for work, and I love LA. I'm not one of those New Yorkers who are stank about LA. I have a lot of love for LA, the history, the culture here. Living in New Jersey, growing up in Jersey, like 6 miles from the city, like you're considered bridge and tunnel. I don't know if that's a term, like people here in LA know that term, but it's basically people who like have to commute to New York, to Manhattan through the bridges, Lincoln Tunnel or George Washington Bridge. So I just always felt like I was never that cool until I actually moved to New York City. And then I got like my cool cred. But until then, I just always felt like I was on the outside looking, and I would see like the New York skyline down the street from my parents' house and be like, oh my God, I'm almost there. And then I finally got there, and it felt really good.
And so I like to get like a family history of people. So like, what's your parents, grandparents' story?
Yes. So my dad is Puerto Rican. He was born in Naranjito in Puerto Rico, and he moved to New York when he was a teenager after his father died. I'm really proud of the story. And my abuela, she moved to the city with her 7 kids after her husband died, my dad's father, and she worked as a seamstress in Manhattan. And just really worked really hard. The kids worked. My father went to high school in Manhattan and dropped out, I think like in ninth grade or 10th grade, so he could work. So yeah, he's a Boricua / New Yorican. And my mom is from El Salvador. She's from San Miguel over there. And actually, this is a funny story. So she came to the States in the 70s. And I never asked her how she got here. I never wanted to ask her because I thought, sometimes you just don't go there with your parents. And a few years ago, I worked for Alicia Keys, and I was working on this immigration story about like people, crossing the border. And finally, I had the bravado to ask my mom, like, how did she get here? And I was like really bracing myself for a heavy story. I was like, let me prepare myself for this. So I finally sat her down at the kitchen table, and I asked her, like, how did you get here from El Salvador? And she said to me, I got on a plane. And I was like, oh. And she's like, I headed to LA. And I was like, oh. And she was like, and I never left. And I was like, yeah. Like that was it. It was like 70s. It was not, like I think we were very fortunate. She just didn't go back to, El Salvador. She stayed here, undocumented, of course. And she found her way in New York City, in Chelsea. She lived there. And then she met my father. My mom is a nanny. Now she was a housekeeper at the time / nanny. And my dad was a chauffeur. He still is. And my mom was nannying these rich white triplets. And my dad was the chauffeur. And he was always hitting on her. And my mom was like, I don't trust you. You're Puerto Rican. Hell no. And then finally, he just kept on asking her out, not in an aggressive way, just in like a, friendly way. And she finally like, okay, I'll just go on a date with this guy. And they've been married ever since. They've been married for over 40 years, which is insane. It's crazy. Yeah, that's a little bit of the origin story there. It's really interesting being Boricua and being Salvi because it's a unique mix. I don't meet a lot of people. Anytime I see someone on Instagram with that in their bio, we all follow each other. There's like 5 of us in the country. If anyone's listening to this and they're Boricua Salvi, message me, follow me on Instagram, Alexis TT. I will definitely follow you back. Let's talk. We're a rare breed.
What was it like growing up in like New Jersey? Like, what was your household like? Like, tell us, like, for someone that's never been there, how would you describe it?
Jersey. So I grew up in Bergen County, and Jersey is such a like Bergen County is such a weird place because it's so diverse, but it's also so like what I always say about Jersey is like at least people are racist to your face. Like they don't try to sugarcoat it like they do down south, or there's no microaggressions there. I remembered one of the first few days I moved to New Jersey, Richfield Park, New Jersey, from the Bronx. My sister and I were playing with our next door neighbors who are Italian, and they called us spick and span, and we didn't know what that meant, and we were like, what? And I was like, spick and span, huh? And then they started pelting grapes at us, and I remember crying and realizing that I was different, and realizing that not everyone was looked like me or was black, like most of my neighbors in the Bronx. And they made fun of me when I spoke Spanish to my parents. That really shaped me for the rest of my life. It was pretty traumatizing. And my parents never sat down and had a conversation with us. They just kind of brushed it off and were like, oh, they're just mean, they're bullies, like, don't pay attention to them. But of course it haunts you for your whole life. So, Jersey is quirky. It's really fun. It's fun. My high school was very diverse. I had this experience, and I think a lot of other POCs had the same experience, where my high school growing up was really diverse, but then I went to college and it was homogenous. It was all white people. I didn't know the world worked like that. I was like, what? There's a scene in Mean Girls where you go into the cafeteria and it's like the Asian people sitting together, like the black people, Latino. Like that was my high school. Like we had everyone. Like I would tell the Korean people like Spanish dirty words. They would tell me like Korean dirty words. It was just I had no idea. So that is something I really appreciate about New Jersey, like Bergen County specifically. Like my high school, Richfield Park High School, was very diverse, but also at the same time, there was a lot of racism. There was a lot of, it was very upfront. It was very vulgar. And you just lived through it. It was different. I mean, I'm so proud of Gen Z and how they handle things now, but it was just to your face, which was interesting compared to the racism I feel as a professional, or I see as a professional as well in my adult life.
Yeah, and so you sort of mentioned that proximity to like New York. So what did you feel like you were missing, or what did New York like call you to?
New York was like, Bright Lights, Big City, like that book by Jay McInerney. Like it was just always so cool. And my high school, my town is so close to Manhattan that we actually would have some students from Washington Heights go to high school in my town because it was a much better school. And they were always like the cooler kids. They were edgier, they were more stylish. To me, New York felt like I could be myself. I could be an artist. I could like make dreams happen there, as a little kid, like watching movies, watching like Home Alone, watching anything like, even those TNT black and white movies, like New York, New York, it's a wonderful town. You just feel like if you live in New York and you can thrive in New York, you can really do anything. And that was something that was always in my blueprint as a kid when I was 14, 15, shopping in New York City in the West Village and downtown with my high school friends. I just always felt there's a magic in New York City that's not replicated anywhere else. And you feel it there, especially in the summertime. Those who know. It's just like fairy dust, if that makes sense. Like you live there, you thrive there, and you just feel sparkly and magical.
So what did you do after high school? Like, did you have a plan? Did things go according to plan?
I did not have a plan. The thing I knew about high school was when I was 15, I knew I wanted to go to college. And a lot of my friends did it. Like a lot of people in my high school didn't go to college. It wasn't a big deal, which is fine. It's also very expensive. And when I told my parents this, they were like, well, yeah, you better go to college and you need to figure out how to pay for it because we don't have that money. And my sister and I looked at each other. We're like, what? I was like, okay, like, okay. So my sister and I, we figured it out and we, got scholarships. We both got full rides to college. All I knew when I was in high school was that I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to go to college outside of New Jersey, outside of New York. So I wanted to kind of get out of that area. So I went to school in Providence, Rhode Island. I went to this smaller liberal arts college called Providence College. But I remembered when I was in high school, I told my guidance counselor, I told him that I wanted to go to a school outside of New Jersey. He said, well, you can't do that. Like you need to, go to Rutgers or a state school. Like your parents can afford it and that's all you can do. And I immediately asked to get a new guidance counselor. And this new one was like, you can do this. Here's the game plan. She helped me as well. And I'm so happy for that. But yeah, I just knew I wanted to get out of New Jersey, get out of the tri-state area. And I wanted to go to college. Those are the only two things I knew. I also loved writing since I was very young. But I didn't think I could really make money doing it until later on.
Yeah. And so like, what did you study? Like you knew you were going to college, but like, were you aiming for something?
I was just trying to get out. I was like, let me get the fuck out of here, out of Bergen County, New Jersey. So I was undeclared. And then as I continued in college, this is so extroverted of me, but I studied communications as my major and sociology as my minor because I love people. I feel like everyone has a story to tell. So yeah, I just figured it out in college, but I just needed to get out. That was the goal. And I was like, I'll figure it out in college.
Like what was the reality of that? You did choose somewhere completely different. And like, what was it like living there?
It was so interesting because the school was very homogenous. It was mostly white people. Anyone who was Latino like me, we were like on scholarships. I'm like, oh, okay, hi. So it was truly a different world. I thought the world was so diverse and intersectional, and that's not how the world works. And I got a rude awakening in college when my first day. I was like, wait, where is where are my Latinos? Where are my Korean? That was definitely really interesting. A really cool thing about going to school in Providence, Rhode Island, is that there's a lot of Cape Verdeans there. And I learned a lot about, Cape Verde and like what that means and that culture. And I never came across anyone from, that country before. So that was really cool to know that. But I think it was a rude awakening for me. I thought the world was diverse and it's not. And if you grew up with diversity, I think that's fortunate, but a lot of people didn't. And as you get older in life, you can see who grew up that way and who didn't. You know what I'm talking
Absolutely.
about.
Absolutely. Listen, yeah, that is that interesting because the same thing did happen to me. I grew up in Chicago and went to school in Chicago, and sort of when I like same thing happened to me. Like I met all the suburban kids who came into the city, and I was like, what world are you guys living in? And even now, like you run across people and I'm like, yep, you're those suburban kids that just moved into the city and this is all new to you. And I guess I have to like cope with you discovering everything. But it is interesting. I think just the exposure level is like so different and so delayed that like people are like grown adults and still playing catch up.
Oh, they're still playing catch up as we painfully saw in 2020 and will continue to do so.
And so what'd you do after college?
What's so funny? After college, I didn't want to have a 9 to 5 job yet. I was like, oh my God, I don't think I'm ready for this. So I actually did AmeriCorps NCCC, which is like community service across the country. And I was based in Denver, Colorado. Never been there before. I did all these like projects in the Midwest. I've never been in the Midwest before. Like I built trails in northern Colorado. I worked for a horse therapeutic riding camp in Iowa. I remember this is so funny. I was in Iowa and I remember someone there was like, Iowa City, it's just like New York. And I was like, how? It was so much. We have coffee shops, we have restaurants. I was like, girl, you need to take a few seats. But it was such a magical year because it allowed me to continue to get out of my comfort zone. And I also, AmeriCorps, it felt like the real world. You're on a team with people with different beliefs and different walks of life. I remember I was in a team with a Republican and, we had really interesting conversations. And this is pre-Trump Republican, which I feel like that term feels very heavy and different now. But it was just a really interesting world. I worked with people I would never work with, and I was in places I would never have paid a ticket to go to. And I think one of the coolest things about being in AmeriCorps was that it helped me work with people from different walks of life. And that really set me up for success when I worked in, different media companies with people with wildly different personalities or views or attitudes, like having that, backbone in AmeriCorps, like helped me to be more of a collaborative person.
Yeah. And so like when did it feel like to you that you like switched to like a professional lane and you were like, I have a career, this is sort of where the path I'm on. Like, did you have a plan?
So when I was a senior in college at Providence College, there was this fiction writing contest and that my professor was holding. And I was like, let me just submit something to kiss his ass, so it looks like I'm, a brown noser. I'm listening in class and things like that. So then I wrote this. I was waiting tables at Johnny Rockets at the time because I was one of those few college students that had to work during college, at least few college students at my college. No one like worked at Providence College, except for me and like five other people. Anyway, I was waiting tables at Johnny Rockets and I wrote this short story called ACS, and it was about the short line cook at Johnny Rockets and how he was trying to assimilate and be American and really kind of not embrace his Mexican roots. So I wrote this short story. It was about Pedro. I remember his name. He's still my Facebook friend. It actually won the contest. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like that's cool. And at the end of that semester, it was my second semester, senior year. His name is Dr. Peter Johnson. I want to acknowledge him. He wrote me a note in my final essay that I wrote. And he said, you could really make it as a writer. You can get paid to do this. I don't usually write that or say that to many students, but you have that voice. Like, have a great summer. And I took that to heart. It was the first time someone has said that to me. And it was always in the back of my head when I was doing AmeriCorps, like, oh, I want to be a writer. I would always be writing in journals and things like that. And after this crazy wild year in AmeriCorps, like working in horse camps in Iowa, building trails, I moved back home with my parents in Jersey and I pursued writing and working in media. And, I was like, okay, I really want to do this. And I have the vote of confidence from, this professor and from also, I'm like, okay, I lived in a tent for 6 months. I can fucking do anything. Like, let me try. Like, I have nothing to lose. I'm also just used to failure. I'm not like, this is like a side note, but I'm not like the hottest girl in the room. And I was picked last in gym class. And I think that I have been rejected so much in my life that I think if you're going to embark on a life as a writer, you have to be used to the rejection. And for every 9 no's, there will be like that one yes. And that changes your life. And that door opens and it changes everything for you. So I was, at that point, I was somewhat used to rejection. And I think that really helped me to sustain the career that I have in writing.
When did that door open up for you where you were like, oh, I have a pathway to like dream career as a writer and I'm getting paid to like tell people things?
I applied to so many, I got back from AmeriCorps. I was like, yes, like I can do anything. LOL. Applied to so many jobs, resumes, nothing. No one hit me up. Administrative assistant here, this, that. No one replied to anything I submitted. I spent months doing it. And finally someone was like, you need to know someone. I was like, oh, I do. They're like, yeah, girl. I was like, I don't know. I don't know no one. So then my father, one of his one of his driving clients was this woman named Miss Levine. She was like this elderly Jewish woman who lived in Englewood, New Jersey. And her daughter, Ellen Levine, was the editor in chief of Good Housekeeping. So of course, my dad, he's like, he's not trying to like hook me up with his clients, but I asked him, I was like, Dad, like Ellen Levine, like Good Housekeeping, can you please say something to her? I need a job. And he was like, hi, Alexi, and he was like, fine. So my father sheepishly, approached her and was like, oh, my daughter. And she was like, okay, fine, I'll meet with her. And I was like, oh my God. So I got to meet with her at the Hearst building. And, she was editor in chief of Good Housekeeping. I had like a business suit on, like a skirt and like a blazer. And I remembered she was drinking water. And I was like, oh, cool. Like in my head, I was like, oh, God, thank God, I'm nervous and I'm thirsty. Like, let me drink water. So then I drank water. And she was like, do you think you can drink water? Because I did. And I was like, yes. And she's like, you can't. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. She's like, like that's not professional. And now I know that that's a power dynamic, but like back then I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, intrude or anything. And we ended up having a conversation and It was a good conversation, even though that, she didn't want me to drink water. There's definitely a lot to unpack there, which we don't have to do right now, but she did end up referring me for a position to be an editorial assistant for a up and coming magazine that was launching soon, Quick and Simple. And that definitely, getting that job, that full-time job with benefits, changed everything to me. Because a year prior to this, I was temping at this place called Gruner and Jahr, which published like YM magazine, all these cool magazines. I was like freelancing for them. It was a bunch of like Devil Wears Prada type of women. They gave me this full-time position to be like a publicity assistant. And in my head, I was like, oh, I'll take it. It's fine. I don't really want to do publicity. I want to be the person pitched to, because I'm a writer. You should be pitching to me. But I took the job. And in my first week of this job, I was doing a reading in New York City. I was actually doing a reading about my family and how it's funny that I live at home or whatever. And I took a projector from Gruner and Jahr. I didn't tell anyone. It was the dumbest mistake I ever made. One of the dumbest things I ever did. I grabbed the projector. I set up a fake meeting with IT, and I was like, IT, we need a projector. And then I just put the projector in my backpack. I was like 24. I didn't know any better. Like, I knew I made a mistake. I did know better. I shouldn't say I didn't know any better. I was just, you're 24, you're always doing crazy things. I put this projector in my backpack, and then after the meeting nights, people were like, where's the projector? I was like, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. And then, I was just so focused on doing a really good reading because I'm a writer, right? I'm a writer. So I remember taking the elevator in the building to like go to my reading, and like the IT director was in the elevator with me. He like eyed my bulging backpack. Like he knew, and I knew he knew. And I just quickly ziplined out of the building. I did my reading. It was really funny. The jokes landed. I got home. I stayed at my friend's place because I wasn't living in New York City at the time because I couldn't afford it. I was crying. I was like, I think I'm in trouble. Everyone's like, relax, just return it tomorrow. You're fine. I went to work the next day and fessed up to everything I did because I'm a horrible liar. And they fired me immediately. They were like, it's a wrap. So prior to this whole Ellen Levine getting this magazine job, I was like, I almost got this job in media, and then I got fired my first week into it because I stole a projector. But I think it speaks volumes to, I was more concerned with telling a good story at this reading than I was about this job, And at the time, I'm speaking from a privileged point of view because I was living at my parents' house, and, worst case scenario, if I got fired, I can just stay there and like work at the mall or something. But I got fired. I was really close to getting a job in media, and I got fired. And it took me 1 year later to actually get that full-time job with benefits.
What did you build from that position? Because you mentioned you got fired from the first place. So like sometimes it just takes like that one job to sort of start building momentum. So,
oh my God, when I got this job, I was so excited. I was like, I have benefits. I have my own paycheck. And I knew that I was not going to, it's like that song in Hamilton, I'm not going to waste my shot. I knew that if I went above and beyond, if I helped everyone on staff, not just the editor-in-chief, I knew that this job was really important, and that if I was really good in this job, it would help me get other jobs. So I took it really seriously. I mean, I definitely had fun. It was a fun staff and everything, but I knew that I had to be like a great assistant to just take it to the next level. So that was really important to me, and especially because I got fired the year earlier, which was so embarrassing. I knew that I didn't want to make that same mistake again, that same selfish mistake. So I just, it was really interesting. I just had to be going above and beyond the other assistants, like working late, I think working late is a scam now, but like back then, I was like, let me be the first one in the office and the last one there. And as an assistant, I think you feel like you have to do that. I don't feel that way anymore. I get in early and I leave at 5 or 6 now, but back then it was a big part of my life. And I had to really, I couldn't fail. I couldn't make mistakes. And I felt like because I made such a big fail the year prior that led me to get fired, I knew that I couldn't do that. I couldn't make any room for mistakes. I just wouldn't allow myself. If I had a question, I would ask people in the office before I would ask my boss because I didn't want her to think I was dumb,
You're sort of hustling, you're working these jobs. So like, when did you feel like you took it to like the next level career-wise?
My career changed dramatically when I was in this really public competition to be Alicia Keys' head blogger. And I applied with 8,000 people. And it was, it was on Good Morning America. Like they captured footage. it was this whole big thing. I had to blog, I had to video blog. I was a huge fan of Alicia Keys because I feel like she's one of those people who's very authentic and from the heart, and she's beautiful inside out. And I think that's rare with celebrities. And I got the job. I got the job out of 8,000 people. I was on, again, Good Morning America with Alicia. They announced me. It put me into this next level, and it changed everything for me. I remembered I got like a bunch of new followers on Twitter after that Good America segment. I had a lot of people. It was kind of weird too, though, because I had people who were my friends and asked me to pitch things to Alicia Keys, but it basically gave me the exposure and the recognition of all my hard work. Because I like to lay low. I'm like, yes, I tweet and I'll post things on Instagram and IG stories, but I'm kind of like a lay low type of person. It really changed my career, and people knew who I was. Who I was. People knew that I won this contest, and people knew, most importantly, that I had like a good reputation of being like a hard worker, but also like an intelligent, creative worker. So that opened so many doors for me. And ever since that job, I've been recruited for every single role since then. So I've never had to apply for another job since that job, because everyone will just like, hit me up on LinkedIn or recruit me or whatever it may be. So yeah, it changed everything for me. It was very surreal in so many ways. But it was also kind of hard because I think I saw people who only wanted to be friends with me because of my close proximity to Alicia Keys or to a celebrity. And that got kind of icky as well. At the end of the day, that job opened so many doors for me and changed my career. It just took it to another level.
When there's like these contests and like people get like these very like public announcements, I think to everybody else, it feels like, oh, this person was just like picked from like obscurity. But it's like they don't just pick people at random. Like you have to sort of like show that you have something. What do you feel like got you to the place where you were selected for that? Like what had you been doing? Like why you?
So first of all, I was very professional with Alicia. I didn't ask to take photos with her. At the time, I was working for Martha Stewart, so I had experience working with a high-profile celebrity. My intention was always to help her create a great website for women. I was never, with her. I didn't want to work for her for clout. I'm not a clout chaser. I was really focused on the product that she was trying to deliver, and that's what when I interviewed with her, that's what it was focused on. I didn't ask her for an autograph. I didn't fangirl with her, but also I had really great ideas, and I put a lot on the table. Like my ideas were innovative. We took a trip to London to do reporting for her nonprofit, which had a gala, and I took it upon myself to report on the red carpet. It was me and these two other finalists, and I felt bad for them too. I'm not a competitive person. I know people are like, you have to be competitive, you have to be the best. I'm like, I'll tell you my secrets. Like if you need career advice, like, call me. The other two women who were finalists, they didn't get on the red carpet because they didn't think in the same way that I did. And I was like, hey, do you want to go on the red carpet with me? I'm going to be here. And I told them what I was doing. But also when I was in London, I did reporting on the homelessness population there. I did an additional story, and I spoke to organizers of like a kitchen there, a soup kitchen. And I compared it to homelessness in America and like how homeless people are more respected in London. And so I just kind of went above, very similar to my first job with Quick and Simple. I went above and beyond. I was like, what else can I do to take this to the next level? I'm not just here to take a first class trip to London and eat champagne and caviar and post it on Instagram and hang out with Jay-Z and Beyonce. Like that was not my thing. I was like, I'm here to do really great storytelling. Let me focus on that. I will never focus on the clout. And I think that's what led me to get the job from everyone else.
Yeah. And like what sort of work did you do, with Alicia Keys, and what are some of the things you were proud of that you accomplished?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just had I did a lot of really great interviews with people like Deepak Chopra, Rachel Roy at the time, educators. I just had, I was helping her build this site from scratch. And it was the interviews that I did were so impactful, were so beautiful. One of the most favorite things I did was I went to New Orleans, and I was there for a bachelorette party, but I decided to get there early and help build some homes, post Katrina. So I interviewed a family whose house was being rebuilt. And it was a really emotional moment for me because the mom and her kids were there. And, I was talking to her about it. And it was the first time she actually spoke openly about Katrina and what happened to her since it happened. And she had, at that point, she hadn't talked to her husband about it either. And it was just like this really beautiful conversation. And she said it really helped her to just put things in perspective. I will say though, this Alicia Keys job seemed so cool, you know, high profile. I got 8,000 people. I was working for this amazing celebrity, but it was also not perfect. And I think that's important to know. All your dream jobs are not really 100% dream jobs. I was working on building this site for her and working really hard, but the site was never coming to fruition. You know, the launch date always got pushed back. You know, I was like, hey, like, when is it happening? And I'm being very candid here, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I'm just gonna say it. I was there. I started in July, and then the following summer, it was like July 2010. The following summer, July 2011, I started kind of submitting Word documents that were blank, that had nothing in it, just to see if they actually read my, not her specifically, but like the team behind her, you know, underneath her. I was like, hey, here's my reporting on this thing, on that thing. And they're like, thank you so much. Like, have a good weekend. I was like, thank you. No one ever said anything to me like, hey, Alexis, like, I just opened this document and there's nothing here. You know, I was just testing them to see if they were reading my hard work, and they weren't. And that was a sign for me that it was probably time to go. So I ended up actually being really open with people and saying to them, oh, I'm looking for a new job. If you hear of anything, you know, confidentially, I would say it, like, let me know. And then MTV came knocking, and they had an opening. And MTV was a dream job of mine since I was a kid. And it was to do social impact on their website. So I applied for it and I got the job. But all that to say is that, like, dream jobs aren't always dream jobs. You know, it was a real honor to work with her, and I worked really hard to get the job. And while I was employed by her, I worked really hard. But I had the realization that this job wasn't going to have long legs with it. So I knew in my heart, and you know, my gut was like, you have to go somewhere where people are actually reading your words and opening the Word documents of all the hard reporting that you're doing. That was a really important year for me because I had this perfect job and I was in this perfect relationship with this really funny guy who I knew I didn't want to marry or have a long-term relationship with. And that year I broke up with him, and that was the year I also left the Alicia Keys job. And I think it's an important reminder to always stay true to yourself. Are you really happy in this job? Are you really happy in this relationship? Is this serving and benefiting you in the way that you deserve? And if not, then maybe it's time to look elsewhere.
Sort of how you got on my radar was through Pero Like, you know, BuzzFeed. Like, what was the journey to that job? Because again, it's like I'm not even sure how like flushed out Pero Like was at the time. So like, what was the journey that took you there?
Oh my God. Well, let me tell you, by the time BuzzFeed recruited me, but at that point, so I told you about getting fired once. I also, when I was being recruited for Better Like, it was 2017. It was May 2017. I had been laid off twice in media at that point. I was laid off in 2015 from Flama. They just, you know, got rid of their editorial team. Like, what Univision was just kind of like, you know, just trying to tone it down. We like all the writers and myself were laid off in May. And then at the end of that year, they ended up closing operations on Flama. So the writing was on the wall. So then after Flama, a month later, I ended up picking up a job at Upworthy. And it was actually pretty cool because I was able to like monetize off my severance. I was like, okay, they gave me like 8 weeks of severance. I was able to pocket 4 because I was only unemployed for a month. Hey. So I worked at Upworthy. It was great. It was a remote workplace. So it really helped me to succeed in the times that we're living in now. But then they were doing layoffs there as well. And I was laid off there in January 2017. So I was unemployed when BuzzFeed recruited me for Better Like. And again, really important to note that, like, you see my LinkedIn or you see me on Twitter and you see all these wins, but you don't see all my failures, you know? So I was unemployed when they came out, and I was like, oh, hi guys, I'm busy freelancing. How are you? Like, I really wasn't busy freelancing. I was like collecting unemployment and trying to figure out my next step. Yeah, they were looking for someone to run the brand and take it to greater heights. And you know, at the time, the brand was a little bit disconnected. They never had like a Latinx leader. You know, they always had white managers. There was some distrust with BuzzFeed at the time because of mismanagement at Better Like prior to me being there a year earlier, Jenny Lorenzo was fired for participating in an identified short. It was very silly, poor mismanagement at BuzzFeed's end. And I worked there. I love you, BuzzFeed. You're my employer, but it's the truth of the matter is that was a poor mismanagement. So I gave it my all. I was really excited. I was nervous too. I was like, especially after Flama, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this again, but I love my people. I love my community. So I remember I interviewed, Curly was one of the people I interviewed with, and he and I get emotional to this day because in my job interview, I was like, let's take things to the next level. Like, let's go to South by Southwest. Let's win awards. This is a really special brand, and together we can elevate it together. And, they hired me. And less than a year later, we did go to South by Southwest and we won awards. We, grew the audience to over 4 million now. And it's because, it takes a village, so it was all of us that helped to elevate it, but it takes a visionary. And I'm really proud that I helped to establish that vision with the team of where we could go, what great heights we can reach. I helped to establish the mission, which is that Pero Like is here to elevate, inform, and entertain the Latinx community. So it's been amazing. It's been incredible. But I was unemployed and down and out when they recruited me. So, I got to note that.
I think a lot of people, probably the listeners, know Pero Like, and it's like for Latinx content and for like even this whole thing of like Latinx identity and community, I think it was very influenced by like online content and like places like Pero Like, where it was like, where else on the internet could we all like relate to each other, find each other, like see ourselves? And
Thank you.
I think BuzzFeed is very smart for its channel because, and I think a lot of other places like BuzzFeed are sleeping on like content for like a certain community. So,
Yes.
I mean, that is your gain, of course. But yeah, I always talk about like, I think all these like meme accounts and like all these like weird little stuff on the internet really did help like connect like Latinx people to one another. Cause I think for a long time, we all just felt like we were on the outskirts. And then here we have like a little pocket of the internet where it's like, and then you see like amazing people come from it. And I think Better Like is like a huge part of that. I am wondering of like, because again, I feel like in this like white media sphere, like what is the general reaction to Better Like? Like do people even get it what it is? Like what is, as you being a part of it and like sort of like birthing it out into the wider world, like what was sort of the reaction?
Yeah, well, I want to say that, Beto Like, I'm so proud of Beto Like because there's been many reckonings in 2020 and still now, and will happen for a long time. And a lot of media brands had to scramble, had to really think about intersectionality and identity. And Beto Like has always been intersectional, has always talked about Afro Latinos, Asian Latinos, the non-binary community, like we just so many other communities, the queer community, like just we were always having these conversations. We were always hiring these people to appear in our videos. And I think that's really served us well because number one, it's authentic, being Latino, as you and I know, is not a monolith. And we never wanted that to be better life. We always wanted to be mindful. We always wanted to be intersectional. We always wanted people to feel not only heard but seen, like they could see people on Better Like and be like, oh wow, like I had the same experience, or that's me. Like I don't speak that well Spanish like Maya, or I'm queer and it took me a long time to come out, like, Curly or something like that. I mean, I think he came out in high school, so he was very early on, but people see themselves in our content. And I think that's really important. And I think in 2017, it's been really interesting. Some people knew what it was, but now it feels like so many people know what Beto Like is. They really respect it. The fandom around people like Curly and Maya and like Yvonne and, even Gadiel and Julissa, who aren't with us full time, but it's amazing. Like I think the best thing about Beto Like is that the team is not doing the content for themselves. They're doing it for the community. And we are really mindful about our approach. And we're not also perfect. There's been some missteps we've taken, but we really try to be mindful. And I think that's why we've been so successful. And that's why we have a greater reach. I mean, this sounds very pitchy, but we have a greater reach than Telemundo and Univision with millennials and Gen Z. And there's a reason for it. And it's because we've stayed true. We've stuck to our guns. We've passed on branded opportunities that felt off to us. So, I'm definitely really proud of that. And because of all that work we've done through the years, Beto Like is so much more of a recognizable name now than it was, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and like where did that come from? Because, if you're doing like a Latinx branded like video content and YouTube series and it's very easy to do like the four white Latinos who are like talking about like
John
insert
Claus,
yeah, and like Conchas and Selena and like so
Hot Cheetos.
hot Cheetos, like all the meme stuff. So like where did that come from? Because again, it's very easy to do like the thing that is very popular. No one is really thinking that critically about.
We have definitely done some stuff like that in the past, many years ago. But it comes from the team. It comes, Beto like has hired great people through the years who are very intersectional. I think Curly has been a really big voice in making sure that we're being inclusive for everyone. And it just comes from within. We'll check things. We'll we have like debates about Bad Bunny. Is he problematic or is he cool? Like, why is he wearing the trenzas and the do rag? But so we have a lot of like internal conversations, but it comes from within. It comes everyone in the team is so mindful, is so intersectional. We're also all works in progress, so we always will like correct each other in a very constructive way if someone says something that needs a little bit more of education. But it's about Beto like hires really mindful, intersectional, smart people. And because of that, the content you see is mindful, smart, intersectional, funny in a good way, not in a pandering, stereotypical way. So it comes from within. It's the team, and honestly, BuzzFeed is really great at respecting Beto like and basically letting Beto like just do its own thing. Like they're like, yeah, we trust you guys, you do you, and because of that, we've been allowed to just have a lot of freedom and to do what we want to do.
Yeah, no, and that's what I admire about Better Like because it's like you do the fun stuff that everyone loves, like quinceañera makeovers, and like I love all that. But also you do the stuff that's like I always describe it like expanding the definition of like Latinx identity, and like again, those are like I'm sure that video does not get as much views as like try every type of Cheeto dipping or whatever.
Yes.
But I admire that y'all do the work in that way because I'm sure it's not like it doesn't feel clickbaity in the sense like it could easily be very clickbaity in the content you're putting out. And I do think you're putting out very mindful content that like no one is asking you to do that. It's not easy to do that. I'm sure like you're not getting 5 million views on those videos, but I recognize that it's important work for y'all to be doing.
Thank you so much for saying that. That means so much. That really means a lot. And anytime we do have a video where it talks about intersectionality or, racism in our community or whatever it may be, different marginalized communities within the Latinx community, I always say it's a community win. So I always say the better, like it may not go viral or get a million views or 500K views, but it's a community win. And if it's a community win, that's a win in my book. So, not everything is about views, just like not everything is about, your Instagram followers. I think sometimes a lot of writers focus on like clout or verification or, and I've done that too, but like, or I need 5K more followers. It's like, no, you just have to be doing great work. And that's how you get recognized is by doing great work. That's how you get staffed on shows. That's how you get hired at BuzzFeed. Like if you do great work and you have incredible ideas that you can execute well, that matters more.
Yeah, and so like I am interested in your take on like Latinx content online and then like which now seems like it's everything's online and then just in like the larger like Hollywood.
I think that we have a lot of work to do. I want to give a shout out though to Netflix's Con Todo and Refining 29's Somos. I think they do a really good job on the internet. I think they do a lot of intersectionality. They feature a lot of different Latinos, and I love the people behind those brands too. I think they're amazing. So I want to acknowledge them. I think in terms of Hollywood, I am so proud to see some of the great shows that have been made in our community, and I think it's been a big win. But I think we still have a ton of work to do. I don't think the work is ever going to stop. I think we need to have honest conversations about intersectionality, about, including more Afro Latinos, Asian Latinos, having queer Latinos playing queer roles. There's a lot of people who may be taking up space, like we see the same people doing the same press interviews or, newspaper magazine interviews. And I think that it's sometimes important to take a seat, and be like, hey, I'm a little bit busy this week, but I know this person, Gina Torres would be great for this. Like, have you thought about interviewing her for this. I'm really tired of the narrative of, we need to have a Latino Black Panther, like where's our crazy rich Asians? Because there are Asian people in our community. They're like the Black Panther win is our win as well. Like, hello, there are Black people in our community as well. And I think that we don't see things in that. I think the younger people in Hollywood do, which is exciting. But I think everyone who's older than me, it's been harder for them to like wrap their minds around that. And I think we have to see things with a lens, like not all Latinos are people of color, So there's a lot of work to do, but I think I'm excited about it. I think that I have done some great work in the community, and I want to continue to do so. I also think that Hollywood, it's hard, but we're not all like Mexicanos or Boricuas. They're I remember just being in New York when I was younger, and people was like, "Where's El Salvador?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." There's a lot of work to be done, but I'm really excited for the voices and the people who are doing the work and educating some other folks in that space, if that makes sense.
I'm always curious for people who like are very much about the work and like really put it into like what they do and what they put out in the world. So like, why do you feel called to do it? Like it's very easy to just like hit the snooze button and like live a life where you're not worried about anything. So like, what compelled you to like make this a part of like your mission?
Yeah. Oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna cry. I definitely feel like it's my parents. I feel like the thing I'm most proudest of in my life is like being the daughter of like Blanca and Ray Ray. Like these are like my parents are so amazing. I know that's rare to hear, and I feel really fortunate to have these really loving, hilarious, supportive, kind parents. But they have broken their back for me. They have done so much for me and my extended family as well, that I just want to be a storyteller that reflects their stories, that reflects their hard work. I'm just so inspired by our community. I feel like I'm a good storyteller, and I want to be able to elevate those voices. I've been a voice for the voiceless. I want to continue to do that. But I think I would be really sad or empty if I wasn't doing it for our community. I feel like it's a really important calling for me. I would be sad and empty if I wasn't serving the audience. It's never about me. It's never about like making this paycheck or securing the bag, even though it should be. I'm not, I should be maybe more financially savvy. I do have a financial planner, thank God, because I don't understand these things. But it's really, to me, I wake up every day and I'm just so inspired by our community. I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired by like Latinx Twitter. There's so many funny people in our community. I'm inspired by Beto. Like, I love them. They're so incredible. I'm inspired by, undocumented voices who have an important voice. So, but really it comes back to my family, and, I just love them so much, and they have raised me to be so proud of my roots and my culture. I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
Like I admire the work you do, and I think I admire a lot of the people who choose to be part of this work, because I think for a lot of people out there, like they love to say like diversity and inclusion and like all this stuff, but for some people it just that only goes as far as themselves. Like it's like I'm in the room, I made it, so like problem solved. I try very hard to like be as like inclusive and intersectional as possible, because to me it's always like when you are where you are and you feel like it's a win for the culture or whatever, like you should still be asking yourself like who's not in the room, like who isn't here, and like the work doesn't stop at end with you. And I think that's sort of where people get trapped a little bit. They're like, I think it might just be like a very American sensibility where it's like, I worked really hard, I got here, so I'm sure there's 3 people behind me, and I'm like, turn around, there's no one behind you. You have to like tell them like, hey, come here,
Yes.
I know you want to talk about like allyship in our community. So like to you, like what does that look like? Because we've mentioned like the things that people aren't doing, and I'm on Clubhouse, so I hear like everybody's like gripes about like what's not working for them, which is, listen, it's not working for anybody, but like what does it actually look like? Like what's the solution? What do you feel like is our path forward?
I think everyone needs to take a good look at themselves in our community. I think they need to take a seat. Like I get invited to do panels all the time. And last year I just, quietly just passed on a bunch of panels and recommended other people for them. I think it's important to do mentorship, like if someone reaches out to you and they want, they want your advice. And if you have the time and you have the space to do it, I think it's important, especially if it's someone like an indigenous Latino or like, an Afro Latina, whatever it is, like make the time to nurture them, answer their questions, be real with them. I think it's about, if you have the power to hire people, who are you hiring? Do they all look like you? Or are there people who are like different looking than you, but also Latinx? I think people just have to just really understand what allyship means, like really help people, give people advice. People don't have to do this, and because it's invisible labor, but just at BuzzFeed, I'm always giving multicultural presentations to different clients, whether it's Amazon, talking to them about Latino not being a monolith, whatever it may be, So, and these are really important conversations for me to have because these brands can understand. I always say, like, it's a 20-minute presentation. I'm like, the one thing for you to remember is Latinos are not a monolith, and it's important for me to do this work too with people outside of our community, so they can understand it. But you don't have to do that work either. That's just something I have elected to do myself. But I think everyone has to take a good look at themselves. And if you're at a point where you're very successful or you've had success, how are you lifting up those other people? Or even job opportunities, like Fran, who's a script coordinator for Hentified. I heard from another friend that they were hiring. I texted it to him. He connected with Steph O. He interviewed for the job. He got it. So even just that, like, tell people. I didn't know Fran that well. I still don't know him that well, but I know he's good. It's just my gut instinct. I'm like, this guy is funny. He has a great voice on Twitter. He seems like a hustler. You don't need to be my best friend for me to help you either. Like, I just have a vibe. I have a gut. Here's a job opportunity. Apply for it. I hope you get it. Being a connector is really important. I think people will tell me they're looking for people for certain jobs and looking for this person. They'll text me or DM me. I'm like, oh my God, I think I know 5 people for this. That would be really good for you. Or sometimes I've been recruited for jobs and I'm like, you know what? I'm so honored you recruited me. I'm not the best person for this, but this person could speak really well on it, or they would be the best person for the job. That's another thing too. Like, you don't have to speak at everything. You don't have to be at every every panel. You don't have to be at every clubhouse. You don't have to be in every like publication interview. Sometimes it's nice to just take a seat, take a step back, and recommend someone else to take up that space.
No, yeah, and I think that's true because after a while, if you're on that like circuit, you're sort of just saying the same thing. So like, and people are asking you to do it, to be on these things, to say the same thing you've been saying, and it's like it's out there. People know what you're about. Like, pass it along to someone else because I do get asked to do some of these things. I'm like, I'm still listening. Like
Yes.
There's obviously someone there who's got another take that is probably that you don't even know about.
Yes. And why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you want to hear your own voice, or are you doing this to amplify and elevate the community? Like, I was excited to this podcast because I know the work that you do. I know who you are. And I was like, we will have a really great conversation. I'm not here to hear my own voice. And I think sometimes, I'll be in like spaces with certain people and I just can tell that they just want to hear their own voice. And that's not really, even on Clubhouse, sometimes there's like certain people in our community who's like talking all the time. And, and some of them are really like great and drop gems all the time. Like Gloria Calderon is always dropping like really words of wisdom on Clubhouse. So there's other people who they haven't really worked in Hollywood. And I'm like, well, why are you talking so much in these Hollywood rooms? Like, maybe listen like me. Are you doing it because you just want to hear your own voice? Do you want to brag on Instagram that you have this flyer and you're doing this cool thing? Or you're doing this to amplify the community, to elevate the community? Ask yourself that question.
Yeah. Shout out to Clubhouse, If anybody needs an invite, I have 6. So like, hit me up.
I'm like, no, because there might be I'm really picky about this because what if you give your invite to someone sus and then they're trolling on Clubhouse? Yeah, who recommended this person who's trolling this Clubhouse room? So
see, and that's giving into my chaos that I might just do. So I am curious about your own writing. Like, what is the state of your writing? Because, it's like you're on Beto, like there's this, like, it's a big job. So like, I'm curious about your writing.
Well, I just got a promotion at BuzzFeed this year. So now I'm overseeing multicultural branded. So I still work closely with Beto, like, but I'm also working with Cocoa Butter, which is our Black Excellence brand. And I'm doing more of like working on the business side of things. So it's actually I'm not running point on the day to day. I want to give a shout out to Alexis Garcia, who is doing it, and she's doing a phenomenal job. So I actually have more creative time in the morning. I have more free time because I'm not managing a team right now. So every morning I wake up, I do a writing session from 8 to 8:30. I do it with Moses Zamora, who did the Selena series. He does this like writing session on Zoom. It's all just like cameras off, and you just write for 30 minutes. So I've actually have more time this year to be able to work on more of my personal creative projects, because for the last 3.5 years, I've like thrown myself on Beto like, and every creative ounce of my energy was on Beto like. So it's been really exciting. I'm finally working on my TV scripts. I'm also working on some exciting projects with Beto like, that I can't talk about yet, but I think that will be public hopefully soon, and before the year is over, I hope. But yeah, my writing is just, I'm really excited. I'm really thankful that I have more time this year to get to it. And it's been really helpful for me to write every morning. It's been really productive for me before work. I can't do it at night because I'm just too tired. So, and I'll try to do it on the weekends too.
And so, like, what are you writing about? Like, what are the themes? What are the stories that call to you?
I am writing for all the people of color who were picked last in gym class. Those are who my stories are for. It's for the person who is in love with the hot guy in school, but they're their best friend. It's the person who has like gotten fired from a job and eventually found another job. It's like I'm ready for all the rejects and all the people who maybe didn't feel that cool or that seen when they were younger, and they're finally coming into their own, or they're celebrating who they really are as they get older. Like that's who I'm working, who I write for. That's just kind of like my thing.
And so I'm always curious of who my guests are a fan of. So these could be heroes of yours, peers, people you creep on Instagram, just whoever's work you're loving right now.
I am the biggest fan of Corey Jefferson. He is a Black writer who won the Emmy for Best Writing for Watchmen. He is one of my favorite. We were both in media together in the come up, and he has successfully transitioned into TV writing. One of my favorite things about Corey Jefferson is that he lays low on social media. He just minds his business. He's barely on social media. He'll tweet something like, I just set up a foundation with the WGA to give scholarships to people, and then he'll go quiet for several more months. Like, he is about the work, he's about the business. He's not getting into Twitter fights. He's not, he's not screaming in the comment section of Diet Prada, which I love that. I love that Instagram brand. And, sometimes I've screamed in the comments, but he is someone who really puts out great work. He's worked on Succession as well. He worked on Master of None. He's worked on a lot of The Good Place. I just love him, and I love the way he carries himself. He's really just a cool guy who like minds his business and does the great work.
So where can people follow you on social media?
I am at Alexis TT on Instagram and Twitter. I think I'm Alexis Tirado on Clubhouse. I'm barely on TikTok, so don't even. But I love watching. I'm like a viewer on TikTok. And yeah, Alexis TT on Twitter and Instagram. And the reason why it's Alexis TT is because I used to have a blog back in the day, and Alexis T was taken already. So I was like, all right, I'll just do Alexis TT. And the silly moniker has stuck all these years later.
So I like to ask my guests to help title the episode. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer. You can put as many words in the blank. You can mix them all around, just whatever feels true to you, your writing, this conversation. I also use it as a community building tool so that when somebody sees the title, they can be like, oh, that's like me. I should check this out. I should follow this person. There's someone that's like out there and doing it.
I love it. How about this? A colorful, curious Virgo Boricua SALVI. I am a colorful, curious Virgo Boricua SALVI. I feel like I'm on a dating site, a dating profile.
And that's perfect because you're putting the bat symbol out for all the other Boricua SALVIs. So,
oh my God, I love it. Yes.
So I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was such a fun conversation. And, I am so fascinated with like Latinx narratives and in the media space. So I definitely wanted to pick your brain about all this stuff. So thank you for coming on.
I'm so honored to be here. You have such a wonderful spirit and energy, and I just really appreciate you and all the work that you do. And hopefully we can collaborate or write something together in the future. Who knows? But you just have a really great spirit and energy about